I work very closely with doctors, and I know I couldn't be a doctor. This is where I was supposed to be. I wish it had been something that I had hit on earlier in my life, but I had to learn the things that I was good at and that I'm not good at. The only way that you can do that is through trial and error, going through one thing and realizing, nope, that's not for me. I don't know if I would have been able to hit on that without going through the paths that I did.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Path Found, the podcast about the real, messy, unexpected journeys that lead us to the work we love. I'm Monica Argandonia, and every week I talk with someone whose story proves there's no single right way to build a meaningful life. Elise Barrow did everything right. Private schools, lots of science and AP exams, Johns Hopkins University, pre-med. She had a plan. Then college hit and the plan didn't. What does it mean to follow the plan and then realize it was never quite yours to begin with? Elise is a public health professional whose career has moved through the DC Health Department, NYU, Mount Sinai, and now clinical research in women's oncology. She came to college certain she was going to medical school. She didn't. And somewhere in the distance between that original destination and where she actually landed, she found work that fits her in a way pre-med never did. This is her path. Elise, I am so happy to have you here today. It has been a minute since we last saw each other, last talked. I'm excited to kind of see what your career journey has, where it's brought you all these years. So like I start with everybody, if you could just go back, school, elementary school, high school, what kind of kid were you? What were you thinking back then, where you would end up?
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much for contacting me and having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to kind of share where I came from and where I am and where I think I'm going. Who knows? Well, for me, I was a studious kid in elementary school, went to Catholic elementary school, Catholic all-girls school, private university, private grad school. Always thought I wanted to be a doctor. Clearly not that place right now, but I was always into science and just exploring how things kind of work in like human science realms, not necessarily environmental science. But I'd always loved that. So elementary school, science was my biggest subject. In high school, I took all the sciences I could, took, advanced placement exams. Didn't do so well on those, but I think there's a lot of reasons why that is. I think it has to do with the exams and how we teach kids. And we're not evolved yet to where we're teaching kids the right things in elementary school or in high school.
We're still not there.
We're still not there.
Yeah.
And I think it's gotten worse. Mm-hmm. Now having kids, it's gotten worse how we're teaching kids. But got into Johns Hopkins early decision, and that was where I wanted to go. So I went there and I said, I'm going there because my plan is I'm going to be pre-med, a biology major. I'm going to go to medical school after that, and I am going to be in GYN. That was my plan and my goal.
Had your parents, I assume they were supportive, but did they go to college? How did you get on that track?
My father had a PhD and was very, again, studious, but he worked when we lived in California. He was working at Charles Drew, which I know from many people is no longer Charles Drew, but he worked there in IT and in computers at, when the dawn of like that being part of education was there. My mom was working at Security Pacific, which it was a bank, a national bank at the time. And so, yeah, they were very supportive. They were both college graduates. And of course, my father a PhD. So it was just ingrained in us, me and my brothers, that, education was the route that you had to go. We are an immigrant family. And so that was always held as the highest regard. Like you needed to go to school. There was never a question about after high school where you were going to go. There was no idea of a gap year or anything like that. It was right after high school, that fall, you're going to be in college somewhere, and that was where you were going to go. And, we, of course, believed that, and we still believe that. And it's a different time now, but that's where we were going to go. And so when I started college, everybody was supportive. My mom was supportive. By that time, my father had died, but I know that he was supportive even prior to that. And so my mom put me on a plane and shipped me to the East Coast. And I came here all wide-eyed and bushy-tailed thinking, I'm going to ace all my classes. I'm going to be great because I'm one of the top in my high school class. And it's going to be easy and it's going to be a cakewalk. And the first semester of college slapped me in the face and told me it is not going to be a cakewalk. And I had to reassess my goals at that point in time. I still had the want to be a doctor. I didn't have the grades to be a doctor. And now I think about it with my college student child, thinking that at 18, making somebody make the decision of what they're going to be for the rest of their lives is insane. And I would not wish that upon anybody. I don't even wish that upon my high schooler and my college kids. But college was a great eye-opening experience for me. I got to explore a lot of different things, but still kept in the realm of science and healthcare and medicine, mainly because I knew that I wanted to see if I could come back to it. I didn't eventually come back to the concept of medical school, even though now every once in a while I think, oh, I could be a nurse. Still can't do it. That's mainly a time thing. But, college was college. It was 4 years of stress. I did it in 4 years, which was always my goal and always kind of ingrained in me that there was never going to be a fifth year or a sixth year or coming back to it or stopping and starting.
Was that because of how your parents had said you were going to go to college right away and finish? Did you ever think, maybe I just need to leave this university? Maybe I need to change majors and fields?
I think it was that you were expected to finish in 4 years. Like, even if that 4 years was the worst 4 years of your life, you were expected to finish in 4 years. There was never a, take your time kind of thing. And changing majors, yes, was something that I eventually did do, but changing field was not something that was really encouraged because I had spent so much time and money and brain power on this field of medicine or science. It was like, you're 21, you can't change that. That's what your life is going to be for the rest of your years. So I stayed within healthcare and I switched from being a biology major to being a public health major. And my major was public health at a time when most schools didn't offer public health as a bachelor's degree. Hopkins was one of the first, so that was great. I concentrated in international health and psychology. International health because I loved it and I thought I was going to go abroad and live in various places and be a pioneer that way. And psychology mainly because I had a lot of psychology credits. And so I was like, well, if I can get a concentration and a minor in this, why not? So I learned a lot because I was able to take classes with graduate students in public health, and I found my niche that way. So it allowed me to stay related to healthcare, but not necessarily doing the things that were going to get me to medical school. And that was great. So I graduated in 4 years. And at that point, my roommate and I, she was also a public health major. She was able to she didn't get into graduate school immediately. We both said, okay, for 2 years, we needed to work. Because even though I had worked in college, graduate schools weren't taking master's candidates right out of college. So I said, okay, I'm going to get a job. And I got a job at the DC Health Department, thinking I would go to the DC Health Department, apply to Hopkins, get in because why not? I'm amazing. And then go back to Baltimore. Well, I worked at the DC Health Department and it was also illuminating. I love DC. It's a great city. I think if I didn't live in New York, I'd live there, definitely. And I worked in DC. I first started out just talking to people at senior centers about breast cancer and cervical cancer screening. And that kind of kept me in the realm of women and children. Then I started doing kind of statistical work and work with trying to get stats out to regular people in the community so that they could use that to kind of fuel either their knowledge, but also their need to access healthcare or to do early screenings and things like that. And I worked with a person she was great. She was a wonderful boss, taught me a lot, was really supportive about me wanting to go to graduate school and really kind of took me under her wing for the 2 years that I was there. And I just worked all around DC. I would visit St. Elizabeth's where the attempted assassin of Ronald Reagan used to live. He doesn't live there anymore. And I'd see how patients were treated there, but also how the infrastructure around healthcare was deteriorating, especially in DC. I was in DC during the sniper situation. I was there during the anthrax scare, and I worked at what was then a closed hospital, DC General, which was their only really public hospital, helping postal workers and other people that had been exposed to the anthrax mail situation to get care and to, talk about what this looked like for them and what they needed to do to take care of themselves and to reduce exposure. And again, I saw how the infrastructure of healthcare was kind of just falling apart, but also falling apart in cities where you have predominantly minority populations. And in DC, they have very little power over themselves. So it was just a really interesting time to be there. And after that, I applied to graduate school because I knew that my plan was always 2 years. And I think, again, it was being rigid with like college in 4 years. There's no plan to be there for 5 or even 4.5 years. When you walk, you're walking. My plan was to be working in DC for 2 years. I did my 2 years. And at that 2-year mark, I knew that I was going to be moving somewhere for graduate school. So at that point, I had applied to graduate school and I didn't get into Hopkins. It's still their loss. I got into NYU and I said, I'm going to come to New York for 2 years, do my 2 years and then leave. And I came to New York and through, personal changes and things like that, I stayed. I went to NYU and again, I was in public health there. So I have a master's in public health. And again, I learned a lot, but it's still not exactly the things that I've learned since being out in the public health field. At that point, I concentrated in community health. So I was no longer thinking international work. I was thinking more domestic work. And, I learned a lot. I worked at the health department in New York, and I worked on a lot of different projects that were related to breastfeeding, early prenatal care, again, working with a doctor who really wanted to elevate stats and data to have programs that followed that data. So a lot of the things that they do in the public hospitals around like breastfeeding and early prenatal care here in New York grew out of my work with the health department and the health department initiatives at the time. I still evolved if we're thinking about what the evolution is in terms of schooling and going off into the world. Medical school was not coming back. It was not something that was ever going to come back to me at this point. And so I kind of pivoted and just took jobs that had a focus on women and children and allowed me to kind of explore the health of women and children in one way or another. And I hit on research as that way to do it. And so I worked on the National Children's Study when I went to Mount Sinai, which was a multi-center study that was funded by NIH. And it was an environmental study, really. One of the people that kind of spearheaded it, he was my division director, and he was working with Francis Collins, who was at the NIH at the time, to create this 21-year longitudinal study. We wanted to enroll women all around the country in different communities to follow them prior to getting pregnant, and then following them during their pregnancies during this 21-year span, and following their children during that period of time to find out what environmental exposures they had, what socioeconomic exposures or non-exposures did they have, what issues did they have, and their outcomes. It was really highly ambitious, and it was a money suck. And the feds eventually said, this way of doing on-the-ground research is not cost-effective. Now, so many years later, 10 years later, I realized, it was not a cost-effective way of going about doing that kind of research, and there are different ways to do it. But it taught me a lot about research and what I loved about public health and working with women and children. And that's flowed through everything that I do now, which is really concentrating on interventional trials, so a lot of cancer trials with drug companies, but also just studies about the health of women. Usually it has to do with like GYN or OB specific issues. And right now I'm working on a lot of studies that have to do with ovarian, endometrial, cervical cancer, and how we can help with early screening and early education, both in men and women, but also when women develop these types of cancers, looking at different drugs and how they work on the biologic level to kill cancer or keep cancer at bay. And so now that's where I think, gosh, I could really go to medical school, because all the science and all the stuff that I learned then that I could not compute then, it somewhat computes now. So, like all that chemistry stuff it makes sense now. Learning it at 18, it made no sense. But now at, 46, it makes more sense. But, that's where I am. That's my journey.
But you wouldn't go back to medical school now?
No, mainly because I'd have to take like half of my undergrad stuff over again. So that would be another 2 years to do that. Then I'd have to apply and, do the MCAT and all that kind of stuff. And at my age, I feel like, I have kids that are in high school, in college, in elementary school, and to take that time to do that for myself would be great. But by the time I actually got the earning power of what I have now, like I'd be like 75. And then who wants a 75-year-old resident doctor? No one wants that.
So you stayed on a path, right? You always wanted to go into this specific field. It wasn't, you didn't become a doctor or nurse, but do you feel like you achieved the goals that you had originally set out for? Like this ended up being okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely okay. There are days when I end the day and I work very closely with doctors and I know I couldn't be a doctor. So this is where I was supposed to be. I wish it had been something that I had hit on earlier in my life to think about that, but I don't know if I would have been able to hit on that without going through the paths that I did. I had to learn the things that were not good and the things that were good and that I was good at and that I'm not good at. And the only way that you can do that is through trial and error, going through one thing and realizing, nope, that's not for me. So that's why I know that I'm not going back to medical school, but I work very closely with doctors. I understand how they think, how they talk, and how they work with patients. And so a lot of that I incorporated into my own life, my personal life, so that when I go to the doctor with my kids, I can advocate for my kids, and not from the standpoint of somebody who's Googled things and said, oh, I saw online that this new vitamin is really important for 5-year-olds, and I'm not going to vaccinate my kids because of this science or that science. I accept the science that's out there because I work in the science field, but I can advocate and speak in a way to nurses, doctors, PAs, NPs that signals to them that I'm not somebody to be like messed with, but also that I'm knowledgeable and I'm also willing to take their knowledge and incorporate that into what I'm doing and what I'm advocating for with my kids, with my health, and with the health of those around me. So I don't think I would have been able to do that without going through all of the things that I've gone through and ended on the path that I'm on right now.
So you mentioned, earlier the idea of an 18-year-old having to decide what they want to do. And I absolutely agree. All the things you just said, knowing what you're good at, what you're not good at, what's even out there. The pressure and expectations at that age is ridiculous. Now, part of it is financial, right? So you got to go to college and finish as quickly as possible because it costs money. Not everybody has the luxury to, stay as long as they want or do whatever. But what are you telling your kids, and what would you tell someone at 18 going off to college? What advice would you give that person?
So I've had to give this advice because I had an 18-year-old who just finished her first year. And I have become a person who, having gone through the process, I want my kids to be happy with whatever they choose, to not have to necessarily choose something that is the incredible moneymaker, that they have a safety net under them. And that's not something that everybody always has. And I think when I was going to college, it wasn't that I didn't have a safety net, because if I came out of college and I didn't have a job, I knew that I could depend on my family to help me. But it wasn't like if you come out of college, you can move back in and hang out and do something like hippy dippy and arty and farty and, very soft. And it had to be something like, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're a engineer, something like in that realm. And if you were on that path, then that's okay. But with my kids and with people of today, I say to my kids, go out and do what you want to do right now. Doesn't mean that it has to be what you're going to end up doing for the future, and that's okay. And I'm supportive of whatever you want to do. You just have to be doing something. Like sitting around and saying, woe is me, nothing's coming to me. I can't get on board with that. But if you're sitting at home and you're making strides to make sure that something happens for you, I'm willing to support that until it happens. So supporting that. My children are not going to be doctors or scientists or engineers, which my public health heart hurts because I wanted at least one scientific child. But I have artsy children and, no braggies. They're pretty amazing. I have a painter. I have another child who does a lot of characters and character development, but draws, digital drawings and things like that. So we know that, they're not going to be the moneymaker because they're not going to be the Michelangelo until further on down the line. But I support them putting something into the world that is genuinely them and that they will genuinely feel good about leaving when it's all done and said and done. Whether they stay in that, I also don't care. I want them to do what makes them feel happy now. And then if that involves a pivot 10 years from now and they're doing something completely different, that's fine too. Because I think during this period of time, that 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old period is such an interesting time of growth that I want them to be able to embrace that and do what makes them feel happy at 18 and know that it doesn't have to be the same thing at 28. And it may not be the same thing at 28 for various reasons, and that is okay. So that's what I kind of instill in my kids, and I hope that they listen to this later on and hear that and understand that I'm here to support them. They're not getting kicked out, on their butts. They have a safety net under them for as long as they need, and that they should develop the talents that they have rather than trying to fit into a box of 4 years for college, 2 years for work, 2 years for grad school, and then your work life after that. I want them to travel. I encourage my kids to travel even now. Go explore the world. Go and do a semester abroad. Learn a new language. Go to classes in culinary school in another country. I want them to do those things because I think those all speak to their talents, but also helps them become better citizens in the world and know what they want to do, experiencing it, so that when they eventually hit on something, they know that, yeah, I've experienced a lot of other things and this is definitely it.
Right. One of the other things you mentioned is, back in the day, a lot of these graduate programs wouldn't take students right out of undergrad. And it seems that's shifted. I know there are public university systems who are actually making it easier for students. You can stay an extra year and we'll double count and we'll make it streamlined so you can get a master's. There are so many different master's programs now online and, in all these things. And I always tell students, wait, you don't know yet what you want that degree in. And it's time and it's money. And it's not going to get you the better job right off the bat. You still need experience. And even for you, you took 2 years, you still went into public health. I mean, what do you think about, that? Should you even have done it then? Should you even have waited longer? I mean, what do you think about kind of this trend of, it seems like master's programs now are just an extension of an undergrad program and people think that they have to have them?
I definitely think I should have taken longer to kind of explore the world and explore myself and what I was interested in. I mean, I still came back to public health, so I knew that's where I wanted to go. But I think had I done more time exploring, I probably would have traveled more, and I may not have even ended up staying in the United States because I see that there are a lot of things that are international that I like to do, and that would be interesting. Had I taken the time and not settled into something, I probably would have maybe been a, person with just a suitcase and a passport, traveled a lot, learned a lot, and then come back to the States maybe now, 20 years later, and decided to, use my experience to get a job that, kept me here and in one spot. So yeah, maybe waiting, I think, is a really good idea for a lot of people. Because even when you're 21, I see 21-year-olds now and I'm like, no, I don't want you to have the power to do certain things that I did at 21. Because I think you can mess up your own life, but also it's too much. It's too much. And because we live so long, so now, we have people that are living into their 90s and to, well into centenarian kind of people, you had the power to do crazy things at 21 that somebody who was 21 but was going to die at 30 because that was the lifespan. It made sense for that person to do that at 21, but somebody who's 21 and is going to definitely live another 80 years.
Right. I tell anybody, why would you want to get married in your 20s when people live to be 80? That's a long time. Like, it was okay when you died at 45.
Yeah. And, I did get married in my 20s, but again, that was like the expectation. That's what you did. But now that I see people who are getting married or who are 25 when I got married, holy hell, no. No. The maturity level is just not there. But I think it's also because, had I not gotten married at 25, again, I'd be traveling, I'd be doing other things that would have given me a different sense of the world. I still travel now, but there's a different way of traveling when you're attached to people than when you're just by yourself, which is totally fine. But yeah, I think waiting, seeing the world a little bit, exploring things, being willing to make changes that may be complete 180s from where you are is really important. Not feeling like you have to make a decision about what the next 80 years of your life is going to be at 21 is really important to know. I do think the education system helps with that a little bit. But like I mentioned earlier, at least in elementary school and high school, we're teaching kids some things, but not teaching them other things that I think will serve them much better when they get out into college and into the real world. We're not teaching certain things or teaching stressing math and science and all of those things and English and tech. But we're not teaching, my kids don't know how to write a formal letter. They don't know how to write an email to respond to people that doesn't use emojis or, abbreviations. Those are skills that I hope we don't lose, but we're not also teaching them. And it becomes difficult.
Right. When I get an email from a student that I have never met and it's like, hey.
Oh my God, I've gotten those.
Can you help me with this? There's no introduction, no.
No, I got an email from somebody who wanted a job for me. He was a really good candidate. Loved him during his interview, and it was during the Zoom interview period. And as we offered him the job, whatever, and then he sent me an email later on saying exactly that. He said, "Hey, Elise," and I was like, "No, you don't know me."
Yeah.
So you start out with "Dear Ms. Barrow," you start out that way. And then once that person has given you license to talk to and speak to them in more of a colloquial way, then that's fine. But yeah, hey, no. And so I've had to teach my kids, no, you don't start an email that way. You don't even start a text message that way with somebody who you've never met. And those are skills I think that are getting lost in the shuffle.
Right. And just, I always tell all my students, after an interview, send a thank you.
Yes.
It's so simple. It doesn't take much time. Send a thank you. If you meet somebody at a networking event and you've just gotten their email, send an email immediately. Say, thanks so much for talking with me and taking the time. A thank you goes a long way.
Those are the people that I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. And I don't know where that got lost, but I'm out there telling them, Elise, I'm out there.
Good. Teach them well. And I will also teach the ones that are younger than that as well, the same thing.
All right. So one more question. Knowing all what you know now, what would you go back and tell your 18-year-old self?
I would tell my 18-year-old self, it's okay to not follow what everybody says that you needed to do in a time frame that society or somebody else has set for you. So if you want to take that year to explore the world, take that year and explore the world. Go and do that, Elise. Go and do that. Or maybe science isn't for you, Elise. There are so many other interesting things out there. Go and learn those things before you commit to anything. But I would also tell 18-year-old me or 18-year-old somebody else, what you decide today is not what you have to be in 20 years. And that's wonderful. That's a good thing that you can live in a world, no matter where you live, that you can say at 18, the decisions that I make or that are made for me, I don't have to keep on that path. And that's important.
That's great. Thank you so much, Elise. I appreciate all of that and all that advice.
Thank you, Dr. Monica Argandonian.
Thank you so much for listening to Path Found. If anything we talked about today connected with you or gave you a new perspective, we'd love it if you subscribed, left a review, or shared the episode with someone you care about. You can also find us on Instagram at Path Found Podcast. To explore more stories, resources, and ways to get involved, visit KeystoneNetwork.org. This podcast is just one part of the journey. At Keystone Network, we're helping young people and anyone figuring it out as they go build meaningful futures one step at a time. A huge thank you to my podcast editor, David Strutt. You can find him on LinkedIn for helping bring these stories to life, and to Elizabeth Miner at Silvermine Creative for the beautiful artwork and web design. And if you're on your own path, navigating the unknown, making a pivot, or simply figuring it out as you go, just know you're not alone. The route may not be linear, but there's always a way forward. I'm Monica Argandonia, and I'll see you next time on Path Found.